I notice them, and they notice me, and they leave me with information. It's very interesting how it works out. So I've been involved with Tibetan Buddhism and different kinds of, lots of different types of religions. I've done ashram stuff. I've been across the board. I've lived on or been to 27, private communities for all kinds of different reasons. So what I learned from the Tibetans, is that they have the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and they also have years and years of training and chanting, because most of their work is designed to assist somebody when they decide to cross over. For 90 days, that they have different chants and different drumming and different stuff to let them know the spirit of the person, where they're at in the 90 days while they run away from the tractor beam of the heaven experience, so that they don't get captured in it. This is why somebody like the Dalai Lama, I mean, there's lots of controversy about the Dalai Lama, but there's a lot of other extreme lamas that have these kinds of abilities, that are traditionally trained, that they know by the different chant and the different sound while they're in their spirit body, as they're going through the obstacle course where they're trying to get away from the heaven experience, right? So they're not pulled into the tractor beam, so that they can go to another place, and then they can incarnate at will, remembering, the last 14 lives that they had as a premier, teacher, right, in the Tibetan Buddhist lineage. So this is what the other monks do. They assist for 30 days, constant 30 days of songs and drumming and all these things, so that the spirit knows exactly where he's at, so that he knows what he has to get through and how much longer that he has to manage the obstacle course before he's free of the entanglement of the heaven experience tractor beam, right? And they use different kinds of wording, but I'm trying to give people wording that they may understand, that's in our reality, abduction, ET, tractor beam, light, all these things. So I started to realize, what we consider the light is probably not, I'm not saying, go to the darkness, but I think where the darkness is more of where the no thing is where, we originated. But I'm not talking about darkness as satanic worship and bloodshed and murder and war. I'm talking about darkness as a reconnection to who and what we are. And I think that's why a lot of us have, because of the mind control, we have extreme aversion to being buried alive, things like this kind of concept, scare the holy hoo-hoo out of us. Death scares the holy hoo-hoo out of us, right? So,
most people.
The other thing too is we wonder why children on the planet have so many diseases and are dying. It's because they've lived so many lifetimes. So what they do is, they give you a new physical body, and you're totally asleep. They shoot you out into the world, and you become a slave to their system. You're working, you're doing this, and everything's controlled from the moment that you're a fetus, basically, because they control your environment, they control, hereditarily who you're being born to, what kind of fear, what kind of place on the planet. So they basically, work your physical body to death while they extract every possible thing from it, money, your life, force or whatever. But the other thing that happens is that they also are streaming, as they're breaking you down and breaking you down and breaking you down through lifetime after lifetime, they're also stealing and using up the no thing. You're part of the energy field that came here that was utilized for battery for your body. So they actually, eventually what happens is you start living lifetimes that are shorter and shorter and shorter. You may live, 3 years because your field has been so used that there's no energy left in it, right? So one of the things that I do in my practice, like if I do shamanic work and stuff, especially working with people long distance, and they're trying to fight a disease, is what I do is called a fill. So what happens is that your field around you, right, your energy field or your energy body, or in shamanism, your luminous field, right, starts to be punctured over your lifetime. and it starts to leak energy all over the place. And there's only a certain kinds of tools and techniques and practices that you can use to actually fill it. But most people are not going to be able to fill it enough in order to overcome a lot of things, abuse, trauma. So people end up dying hundreds of years sooner than they should. So the field is like saran wrap. So people, when they start getting sick or they start aging, they start to feel kind of like a panic attack disorder. But that's not what it is that you can feel your saran wrap field coming in closer and closer and closer into your body. And it's actually wrapping around you and suffocating you to death. So you're not, because there's no energy in it. So you're basically, the panic attack is a signal that your field is collapsing and it's starting to tighten up like saran wrap on a bowl and starting to extinguish you. So I don't really see people as having disease or mental illness or all this other stuff. A lot of it is a product because of the siphoning of your energy field. And because of all the things that happen to you in this awful world. Even Don Juan Matus talks about it in Carlo Castaneda's books. He said we're rammed and rammed and rammed and rammed. Our field is constantly being rammed with everything, but it punctures holes in it. And so by the time, we're 50 years old, we're dying, 60 years old. I mean, life expectancy, like in the United States right now, is like 65 years old, between 60 and 70 years old. Look at all these famous actors who have this great lifestyle, who eat vegan, who have total access, chefs and private diets. They're dying. Between 65 and 73. I mean, so there's our life expectancy. So so that's kind of a component. So let's go to, I just want to talk about these Tibetan monks really quick, because this is just like the most engaging story of all time. So the Tibetan monks kind of run their shamanism as a mummified body, where a lot of like the sorcerers, South American shamans, they utilize a lot of their power just to leave this world, go into another world and dimension and rebuild their world. I think in Carlo Castaneda's books, one of the oldest people that Don Juan talks about is a guy called a tenant, and he's 10,000 years old. And he periodically makes deals with young shamans, gives them knowledge and things to generate power. But from that point on, he's going to utilize some of their energy field in order to keep himself alive in his body. But he's a pretty interesting character. So with the Tibetan monks, so this was actually in the mainstream news. It wasn't talked about fully, but what was talked about was that a 200-year-old sitting in lotus position, mummified monk, was removed by archaeologists and scientists out of a cave in Tibet. And that they took it to a lab and were cutting parts off, and digging stuff out and doing DNA analysis and all this other stuff. And they never asked anybody nothing about it. So the Dalai Lama and all these people, I think this was 15 years ago or something, they all were in like an uproar because they were trying to explain to, these dumbass people what they had done. Because, they were saying, look, he's not done yet. His body is mummified because he's traveling in other worlds, and his body needs to be there for when he decides to come back into it, and then it'll rehydrate, right? It'll rehydrate, and then he can stand up and walk out of there and interact with this world. But if the mummified body isn't in the place where he left it, so then you start to see like how old Tibetan Buddhism is and why it was so important for the Chinese to raid these caves and to push these ancient monks out of these places so that they couldn't do the practices that they were doing. So, that cave had been watched, where periodically they'd send a guy out there because, they have it all written down. Okay, this, crazy man Lama, he's in the cave over there, and he's been there for 200 years. He's mummified right now. So can you guys just, every year they send somebody, to trek through the mountains up there to go to the cave and see what, his status is. Does he need some food? Does he need water? Does he look like he's rehydrating? Should we send a lot of people over there just to harvest the information, when he comes back and he can talk about it, kind of a thing. So, and they were saying, like, I read that sometimes these people can be gone for like 1,500 years and have a mummified body left behind in a cave. That's why they don't bother them when they go into, they learn a certain amount, 25 years of monk education, then they decide to go into a cave indefinitely. And that cave becomes theirs until they, give it up. And so for these scientists to have gone into that cave, totally destroyed the ability of that Lama to come back into that body, to actually bring instructions and information from other spaces and places, and maybe even going and undulating, with the nosing for a while and then coming back. And so it totally destroyed the lineage of that person because he couldn't come back into the body. And even if they would have put the body back, they wouldn't have gotten the position completely correct. And the fact that they damaged it made it impossible for him to come back. So he's not really dead and he's not really alive. He's in, kind of a limbo state. So, when we're looking at consciousness, we're looking at mind control. Everything that we participate in, the everything is a lie. Or my last teacher, Babudo, Shoshone medicine elder, he died in 2016 in June. He said everything is the opposite in the everything than what we know or what we believe. It is the opposite. So sometimes it's easy to go, you're thinking about something and you think, well, what would be the opposite? Well, that would be the truth of it. So when I came back from my DMT experience, one of the reasons why I couldn't drive a car was that everything was erased. So all my training from the everything was completely erased. Like holding a toothbrush and trying to get toothpaste on it felt like a major obstacle. I was just like, holy fuck. I mean, like trying to get my underwear on and my pants on and all these things that you're taught, as a program. Like, I'm not a big naked person. I don't want to run around naked. That's really not my deal. I'm not really into it. But, I can see why being naked would be like so freeing from the mind control system because you wouldn't have to, suit up every day. I mean, I couldn't get my underwear on the right direction. My pants, I couldn't get on the right direction. I mean, when I came out from being in the no thing to the everything, I had to kind of retrain myself. I couldn't hold a fork and knife. I had to make 2 nights after this experience, I was going to make my famous chili. I stared at the crock pot and couldn't remember what was chili, what went into chili. I mean, and I think it was a really great experience for me. I mean, there are days sometimes where I draw a blank on stuff, like I got to ride a bike and I've got to relearn how to ride a bike. I mean, so it's good to have had a break in the mind control systems, but everything you develop, and they don't call it, this is the other part that blows me away. They don't call it mind control. You know what they call it? They call it muscle memory. Well, if you're going to be a pro golfer, then you have to develop the muscle memory, right? Which is just a mind control system that controls your muscles, your bone structure, your mind, your hand-eye coordination. It controls all that kind of stuff so that you can get it perfect so, you can make a lot of money or whatever else it's going to be. So everything about our system is about mind control. It doesn't even matter, what it is. And trying to break free of those control systems can be like an astronomical, type of event. And then I'll let Lenny talk for a few. And then I want to conclude with how we can figure out, by looking at ourselves and looking at other people, just some simple tools that you can do to figure out how severe the mind control is, the patterns, the training, and everything else in people that you're dealing with. And this can help you to stay away from them. Because, in part of our control system, what is it? give the shirt off your back to somebody else, help them. And then in turn, it turns into a bad situation because they're under a major level of mind control. And then, it turns into this battle and fight. And then you end up in more mind control and you can't get out, right? Because you want them to do the right thing and they're not going to do the right thing. So it's good to kind of be able to physically be able to assess people that you see on TV, that you see. I won't even go into movie theaters anymore because it's like a giant mind control system, like blasts my face off. There are a lot of places that I don't go anymore because I know if I go there, like a big store, if I'm not prepared to go in there, and this other bullshit stuff about protection, oh yeah, put protection on yourself. You know what it does? It's like a beam of light, and it attracts more entities and more demonic stuff. Because in the polarity, the light rises up and the darkness has to battle it down, right? The seesaw. And then if the darkness gets too high, then the light has to fight it. So, save yourselves a lot of trouble with putting on this protection so the dark beings can find you more and take you over and destroy your life more. Stop doing those kinds of everything in this world practices, If you don't know what kind of practices to do, then just stop for a while, and just evaluate everything you come in contact with. Go back to Sesame Street. Which one of these things doesn't go together? Which one of these things, doesn't belong? Like, is that normal? Ask yourself, holy cow, is that normal? I mean, people can't even see the chemtrails in the sky, and there are lines and graphs across the whole sky. Which one of these things doesn't go together? Which one of these things don't belong? I mean, and people think that they can, just wait for ascension to happen. It's like, we can't wait for ascension to happen. This is it's an individual salvation that we have to become conscious, and we have to do the work. And the work is something completely different than you ever could imagine, or any kind of spiritual information out there. I would highly recommend Lynn Andrews' trilogy from the 80s. I'd highly recommend any work with Carlo Castaneda, The Art of Dreaming especially, and things of that nature that are just going to really rock your boat, out of the comfort zone. So anyway, Lenny, do you want to add some stuff? And then towards the end, we'll talk about the physical.
Yeah,
Hello?
I have enough notes here that tell me to ask questions that if I ask a single one of these questions to you, it'll be another half an hour before we get back to where we are. So let me talk about the idea of life and death as a chemical reaction. And chemical reactions are reversible. That means that as you get to the point where you have two things that come together that are going to react to be two different products going off, the combination of letting go of one and hooking up with the other and switching partners in that exchange reaction involves building up to a lot of energy, and at any time in the energetic buildup, the players can quit and go back down to ground state. But once you get to your excited state, that transition state where things could happen, they could either happen forward or they can happen backward, but whichever way they happen, you dispel the energy that you had to build up to get to the transition state, and you've made a change that's irreversible, and sometimes going backward does not get you to the same level of energy as what you started when you began the transformation. So what I've just described is sort of like half a wavelength, where you go up, you peak out, then you go down the other side, and then the next half the wavelength, you go down deeper, you bottom out, and then you go up the next side, and then you go to the next single unit of the wave, and you again go through the up, down, down, up cycle, Or it might be reversed in polarity and you have an up, down, up cycle instead of a down, up, down. But either way, they're just one shifted off the next by 180 degrees. That whole image of how waves work doesn't work that way. That when you have a 0-point source that's emitting a wave, it goes in all directions at a single frequency that the wave is set forth at. And so the model we've been given by physics is one where once you've been educated to the physics, you are then stuck in the room. And so we have to uneducate ourselves of everything we thought we knew because it doesn't make sense anymore. We're gone. So now let's talk about the symptoms that you can look for to see how your mind controlled.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about, hey, can you just talk for like 2 minutes? I just need a break, just a 2-minute break.
Most certainly.
I had too much coffee. I'll be right back.
The new way can be found on Steampunk Radio, and you can find Steampunk Radio on the TuneIn app. And so if you use the TuneIn app, you can also find Revolution Radio. And on Revolution Radio on Saturdays at, I think it's 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern, Bridgette has a show called Carrying Water and Digging Holes. Anyway, it's a real good show. She brings on different guests and she talks about lots of things like she talks about here, there, and it would be a very informative time for everybody. Bridgette, what time is your show on Saturday morning?
No, well, on Pacific time, it starts at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And then, and East Coast time, it starts at 1 p.m. But you can find it on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you look in Studio A, we're in Studio A. And then you can find it. I don't have a co-host anymore, which who knows what that means. But so this week, I actually have a really great guest, a friend of mine, Medicine Bear Whitebo, who does native stuff. He also was MK Ultra since he was like 6 years old. He's a good friend of mine, and he's developed new ways of growing weed to create every kind of medicine that he needs to get off all the pharmaceutical drugs that he was in. And he was also in the military as well, so he was super soldier. So anyway, he's coming on Saturday, so that should be like a really great show. Anyway, and so you can find it on Freedom Slips. We're in Studio A, on the Studio A player kind of a thing.
And everybody can also find Bridgette and I both on Steemit.com. She's at Bridgenet, BRIDGENIT. And I'm at Lenny Thyme, with time spelled THYME. And anything else to get word out there while we still have 40 minutes in the show?
Yeah, so the other thing too is you can find me at Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project on YouTube. And I have tons of my own YouTube stuff, and then playlists of stuff that interests me. So I put stuff up there. But anyway, so that's about it. Do you have anything else to add for that? And then we can dive into symptoms.
Let's dive into symptoms.
Okay. So if I'm looking, let's talk about two things. Like usually there's trauma, insomnia. People who have trauma insomnia usually are under really heavy mind control. And then there's this trauma narcolepsy. Trauma narcolepsy that where, like I'll be giving a lecture, I'll notice it right away, where people start to, they think, oh God, I'm just really tired today. And it's not that they're really tired, it's just that they can't assimilate your information. And so they shut down. And so if you you go someplace and you're listening to a lecture or workshop or whatever, and you're fading out and you can't stay awake. Your mind control systems are defending you against any new information that may come in and create change. So that's something like if you are constantly falling asleep, or you're not dealing with your reality, or you have a lot of exhaustion, you're probably in a period of, really heavy mind control, or you're hitting up against some stuff where your control systems are trying to shut you down. People who have, so if we're predominantly left hemisphere lateralized, and that means a lot of different things that we'll get into with the physical body. It means that the right brain is off. And so I always have these people say, oh, I'm creative and I'm an artist and all this other stuff. Yeah, but you're not right brained. Right brained is more of like the omnipotent. It's the being in the present moment. It's symbolic language. And they early on and through TV and movies, continually shut down that part of our brain and keep it shut off so that they can keep us, as mind-controlled slaves. So usually we're left brain lateralized. That means that people who are under serious left brain lateralization, they're going to have diseases. They're going to have mental illnesses. They're going to be like reptilian. Some people, I've noticed like all of a sudden in the last 10 years, I'm watching people that have humps on their back, like are leaned over and literally have humps. That's a very lizardy, they're actually morphing into like a lizard kind of, body because of the mind control. And I'm not saying that they are reptoids. I'm saying they're probably humans, but they've been under reptoid, heavy mind control for long periods of time. So now that their bodies and genetically, now we're hereditarily turning into a lizard humanoid, right? Without the capabilities of the reptoids. So you start to see that start to happen. People that are under heavy mind control are going to be physically cold a lot. They're going to need, heat. That's part of the reptoid, thing. They're going to be cold and calculating and manipulative. Sometimes they have a lot of hoarding going on, they have a lot of, me against everybody else, all these different things that fall into kind of, snake or lizard or reptoid kind of behavior. They're going to run a really low brain wave, and they're going to be really reactive towards other people. There's going to be constant reaction, whether it's a pushback, a threat. And we can find ourselves doing these kinds of things. Like people will say, well, how dare you? Who do you think you are? Those are kind of reptoid statements, right? To kind of gain control back over you. Jealousy, envy. These are all just kind of reptilian, situations.
So do we control our own minds at all, or are we just a bunch of programming on top of programming?
No, I think it's program after programming, and it takes a huge amount of work in order to get in control of your own mind. And I'm not really sure that meditation helps. One of the things that helps me is to go work with plants, or go shovel something, or completely take myself out of the reality, that's playing out to the extremity. Like yesterday, I had a whole scenario happen,
right,
where a friend of mine who was my co-host, totally went so psychotic. It was unbelievable, like over nothing. Totally lost her marbles, blocked me on Facebook for nothing. It all happened in like seconds. I'm still not really sure what happened, but that's a reptilian programming. Like, this is what I want. This is what I want you to do. You're not doing it. And so, I'm, going to flip out and, I'm targeting you. So, and the thing is it probably has nothing to do with me, probably has nothing to do with anything. Could be like a combination of things, but that's the moment where, she hit up against a wall and the mind control system took over, which that I call the saboteur program.
Okay.
It's the destruction program where you destroy relationships, sabotage, future income, sabotage community. And this is the other thing too. I really I've had some really good experiences and some really bad experiences. I've had some really reptilian experiences in communities where they're all kind of running a similar reptilian program, and if you can't fit in right away,